much about change, and I can see from the attendance today that change is very much something that all of you are interested in. So without further ado, I will just describe, if you like, what we mean by change management and what are the challenges with change management, and maybe some of the issues to consider during the implementation of change. Perhaps just one or two quotes to start with. Change is something that affects people before it affects organizations. And this is, as you will see, from the issues that do arise when organizations attempt to introduce change programs, that most of these issues are people-related. So man's character is his destiny, and I think whether you're born as an optimist or a pessimist, change will affect you the way you perceive it. So, that is really the way things happen in real life. And change has got degrees and has got, if you like, different types. Very often, when we talk about change, it's the fundamental, the radical, the whole perspective of change that shapes a new work environment or a new organization and the way it relates to the internal and external environment. But you'll be surprised to hear from me that most of the change happens incrementally, and most of the change is really a routine change that we can cope with, we can grab, and we can control. It's really the big change programs that affect people and the way they respond to it. Why do change initiatives fail? You might be interested to know. First of all, organizations not knowing where they want to go. A poorly defined state of future and poorly defined visions. Poor preparation, the readiness for change. Very often with re-engineering projects, for example, all the other initiatives that are taking place are not coordinated and synergized and brought together to create one positive momentum that propels the organization forward. And lack of methodology, lack of structure that drives the change program, and lack of consideration of human issues. And these tend to be an after effect, a consequence of the change. We realize that all of a sudden we have people to train, and we have some redeployment to take place, and we have to analyze the job descriptions and so on and so forth. And some of the change programs fail because lack of top management support for the initiatives. And the curves that we have come across indicate that senior managers are very, very excited at the beginning of the initiative. And then they lose interest, and then towards the end they become fired up again. But the most critical period is really in between, when you convert it from a paper-based blueprint into reality, when you start to tamper with the organization and start to dismantle the structures and the systems. That's when the support needs to be visible and apparent, but unfortunately that's where it tends to be lacking. And towards the end, because they are coming out to demand results and demand that things should function the way they want them to do. The element, as I said, of change is people. What is the issue with people is really the resistance to change. Why do we resist change? First of all, because we believe that we might lose control. So there is the fear is that I might be displaced. I might not have the power that I used to possess, knowing the environment, knowing the job, knowing the technology that I work with. And I may not have the degree of influence that I used to have before. It might challenge our credibility because people believe that change is going to really put them on the spot. Transparency in the sense of changing the work environment is very revealing and unveiling, and that makes a lot of people feel comfortable and makes their credibility, if you like, online. And we might just resist change because we disagree. We are born that way. It's against our values, it's against our principles. we might really cherish the heritage and the legacies that the previous generation of colleagues and workers have brought into the organization. Maybe we have been there a long time and we disagree with change. A lot of people are like that. They're passionate, they're caring, but they resist change for that reason. On the other hand, when it works and works well, what are the main reasons? First of all is having a clear vision for the state in the future, and knowing exactly what we would like to do, if you like, in terms of the pervasiveness of the change and how the organization is going to be affected. We look at change, how it affects different bits of the organization from an integrated perspective. There is commitment to really walk the pace and cope with change through learning and through adaptability. So learning is really highly valued. We must learn how to manage this beast. We must learn how to work with this new technology. We must learn how to work with this open environment. We must learn how to operate these new systems and so on. So learning becomes a driver and becomes the fuel of change, and therefore the risk of resistance or failure diminishes. And of course, top management commitment is really at the helm, and they are the ones who put the effort and the time to urge people on, to communicate, to resource, to support, and then to have a unique contribution themselves. 3 most ignored change readiness imperatives. Very simple stuff, but common sense is not so common. First of all, the analysis of status quo. Where are we now? Why do we want to change all of a sudden? It's not a fashion, it's not a fad. It's a business survival imperative, and then if we want to do it properly, we must do an internal capability diagnosis. We must know where we're deficient. We must know the risks on our survivability. And we need to prepare the readiness of absorbing the change, the copability element. And that requires really a lot of attention. Part of it tends to be looking at the technical systems. But what tends to be neglected is really the human element. The skills and the competencies and the cultural and the values and the climate of work, that's where the analysis ought to be made. And developing a comprehensive vision for the future state and the project milestones and the expected results from the change. If you wanted to look really at the behavioral mindset that affects change, you will find that it's a normal thing to do. People, the first reaction they have is, hang on a minute, why change? Why modify this? If it ain't broke, why try to fix it? So they go through what we call a state of denial. And then they become pessimistic to start with. So you might hit the bottom of the pit of despair. And then the acceptability comes via a vigorous, concerted effort from top management who explain the need for change, who can put the business case, who can communicate the benefits to the organization and the individuals. And gradually, you will see that negative energy turning into more positive energy and commitment. And then from grudging acceptance, it becomes elation. Elation is very important because that means the individual is fired up and they're going to propel that change. And then the business as usual becomes the one which is after the effect, where the change has had its positive effect. So if you look at this matrix, basically, the way you conduct the change and its implication on the business is the way we get the benefits from it. So if you look from the top right-hand corner, realignment is really not tampering with status quo. It's just adapting to a current situation and tweaking here and there. So the impact is going to be incremental. Or you could really break down the same pieces and put them together in a different format. That's reconstruction with a bing bang. Or you could really use the transformation perspective. The difference between realignment and transformation is innovation. So realignment is really optimization, efficiency-based, effectiveness output-based. Transformation is really the degree of radicalism that is based on doing new things. unprecedented, basically, experiences. And then the transformation is either incremental, evolutionary, new ideas, new innovations, or revolutionary, BPR-based, which is Big Bang. So those are the two, okay? Tampering with the same pieces, introducing new innovations. I just very quickly now zoom through with this four-stage model called Creating a Consensus for Change. First of all, how to create a shared agenda, how to create a common direction, a vision, how to create a capacity for change, and really the implementation of developing competencies. The shared agenda is, first of all, identifying where the resistance might come from, what are the fears that we need to alleviate, look at the assessment, organizational assessment for change, the preparedness, and look at the implications on our norms and values. Some change does not support the values that you would like to inculcate, and that needs to be paid attention to. And we need the buy-in of top management, so they need to be on board with it. That's really the agenda, if you like, the contract for change. If you want to look at more detail, what needs to happen for this sharing the agenda, map the impact of change on the organization, look at the scenarios, look at the likely implications, assess the organizational readiness, means where are our strengths that will support the change, where are the weaknesses that might prevent the benefits of change, what are our priorities therefore, which stance do we need to take, and then finalizing by taking the agenda where everybody's buy-in is there, in the common pot. And really, we are working with that positive momentum. In order to prevent that dip and create really the elation factor, we need to carry as many people as possible with us for that momentum of change. That's a shared agenda. And the big tool here is really effective communication and self-diagnosis. Then we are into the implementation by saying common direction, and that will require, if you like, a stage of breaking down the pieces of the jigsaw, putting the new seeds in, and refreezing at the end to maintain the gains. So change is breaking, putting the seeds, and then building and maintaining, those three stages. Continue that positive momentum, that elation through regular information, regular assessment, regular communication, and really monitor the milestones by having a roadmap for change. And again, very similarly, the detail is for you there to read. What will it look like for us in the future? How will it support our strategy? And what will be the learning experience when we go through this journey? And how do we monitor the progress so that people know that things are happening? Some change programs take 18 months, they take 2 years. It's a very long time. People become impatient. Management can become impatient. They might want to move the goalpost, but if they see that the change momentum is working, the scenery is changing, the metamorphosis is happening, then they are more likely to say, let's step back, let's observe it, it's working in our favor. Without measurement, there is no confidence, and you need to build that confidence in top management. Then the capacity for change is really to maintain, if you like, the ship on course and weather the storm, because you have deployed all the synergy levels. You are using all the consensus and all that positive momentum. Because the paradox is that prior to change, organizations are designed for robustness, to last. In the old-fashioned way, a structure is there to carry you for a long time. So you don't break it, you don't change it. And the work has to be done routinely. And the focus is on consistency and optimization. And disruption to status quo is really something that everybody becomes concerned with. But here we are talking about change, which is breaking all of that paradigm and then saying we want some dynamism and we want really to be fluid in what we do. We want to introduce more flexibility. And it doesn't seem to work in the same way and the same mindset. So that's the challenge. It's a behavioral challenge. because there are different requirements, different way of working. This is the way I've always worked. You know, it's looking hierarchically. It's reporting to line management ladders, and all of a sudden, you know, it's cross-functional, it's process-oriented. You know, teams reporting to different bosses. Resource management becomes an issue at different stages. You know, the customer is the focus, not pleasing the boss or not the management by objectives. You can imagine if you have done something like this for 15, 20 years, and all of a sudden that routine is broken, you will be lost as an individual, as a human being. That's exactly what happens. So building that capability and adaptability to change are the challenge. So again, the detail is there. What are the helpful mechanisms that we can put in place? Information, information, information. We need to communicate that. Make sure that the change agents play their role by assertively and positively selling that momentum for change, so nobody sees that they are going to be losers, but everybody can see that they are winning out of it. Clarifying roles so that nobody is lost. And people know what is expected of them, and they can make a positive contribution, and they can prepare themselves. Readiness for change is for me as an individual. You know, psychologically, I have to prepare myself. The job title has changed, the job description has changed, the work environment has changed. The new competencies are the ones that I will move forward with. The old baggage is something I'm going to leave behind. You know, it's a trauma, if you like, and it needs to be coped with in that way. And of course, use like the frames that we use when we are servicing or re-engineering buildings. We will put structures which are temporary structures that will really enable us by creating efficient change. And the last bit of this model is really developing the management competence, making sure that the people are coping with the change, making sure that we alleviate the fears and we give them the skills and the competencies to help drive that change by themselves. But also the work environment, the new work environment, you know, we build the skills, we build the expertise levels required, and we help them cope and adapt. And if we do that, basically, we're hitting two birds with one stone. We're creating that buy-in because people are related and they feel comfortable, but also we are delivering the organization and the benefits that it wants to achieve. You know, so the people first and the technical systems second. And at the moment, every single case study that you come across is that it's the technical systems that are first because they're the easy ones. And then we think about people at the afterthought. So the details is there again for this element of the model. Having a common view about what is expected of people in terms of the new performance, the new work environment, and the abilities that they will need to develop. Having, if you like, a perspective about performance, quality performance. What is the measurement now? What is the focus now? What are the business imperatives now? What am I going to be evaluated on now? You know, that kind of perspective. And really, if there is deployment, is the right person in the right place with the right skills and competencies, and making it all realistic. So the deployment of people is not just to deal with numbers, but it's to deal with strengths and to deal with confident and synergized and fired up individuals. And developing the fuel through this learning environment so that people take the change as an opportunity to become lifelong learners. So learning to learn skills because they know that what they have gone through this time round is going to be the norm in the future. Because change is a process, change is not a project. And on average, the large organizations now, they re-engineer every 18 months. In 5 years' time, you will be expected to re-engineer every 6 months. And we have to learn how to cope and adapt. But we can no longer afford to resist because we have values and we cherish the past. It's really the future that matters to all of us.